Welcome to the Enchanted Earth podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own. So welcome. Today we have with us Jan Johnsen, and let me tell you a little bit about Jan. Jan is an admired landscape designer and author. She was a 2019 recipient of the prestigious Award of Distinction from the Association of Professional Landscape Designers. Trained in landscape architecture and professional horticulture, Jan has worked in Japan, Hawaii, and Kenya, among other places. She is an inspiring speaker and has taught at Columbia University for many years and still teaches at the New York Botanical Garden, where she was named Instructor of the Year. Her best-selling book, Gardentopia, and her other garden books, Heaven is a Garden, Spirit of Stone, and Florotopia, are beloved books of many people. Of course, I have a few here, but I just pulled this one up. So thank you so much for coming today, Jan.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here with you, Maureen.
Well, 10 years ago, we did a workshop together, Heaven is a Garden, and that was, I think, pretty soon after your book came out, Heaven is a Garden.
Yes.
Oh, it was an amazing connection, I think, between the two of us, because we were just talking. We both have Mercury and Virgo, so we have like this real need to be grounded and practical, but there's also the underlying, I guess, feeling is the mysticism and the enchantedness of this amazing planet.
Absolutely. I remember first meeting you, and I went to one of your talks, and you taught us all how to douse, and it was mind-blowing. I was ecstatic. I still have my little dowsing now, and that was 10 years ago, and I mean, I wish everybody could take that class with you.
You know, thank you, Jan. It is a very popular class when I teach it, and it just gives people like a visual of our energy fields. And you can use dowsing rods to measure the energy fields of rocks, of trees, of flowers. And you know, obviously there are many other uses for dowsing rods on the land and for divination purposes and all sorts of amazing things.
Can you imagine if they did that with kids, if they taught dowsing with kids in schools? It would just be revolutionary, because the kids intuitively know this stuff anyway.
Yes, I would love to share this little bit of quote from the Spirit of Stone that I saw this morning. My love of stone has led me to work with rocks, and many of the photos in this book are from landscapes I have created. As I set them in a rock garden along dry streams or standing stones, I enjoy a kind of rock awareness. I silently talk to the stones as I work with them. The operative word here is silently, because if I did this out loud, people would wonder what I was doing. Nonetheless, I do talk to the rocks. And surprisingly, the rocks respond and let me know if they are amenable to change or not. These rock conversations can be enjoyed by anyone. You just have to listen.
Yeah.
Wow.
I try to be very practical in my books, but I can't help but let all my mystical leanings just dribble out a little bit, which you always catch. But it's true. You listen. You just quietly listen. And then once you tell yourself that you're not going crazy and just go with it, it flows. Like, for example, when I'm placing rocks, like in a rock garden, or because this is what I do, I make gardens. I'm a landscape designer for over 50 years now. And when I place rocks in a rock garden or in a stream bed or a waterfall, number one, the first rock you place is always the most important. He's kind of like the leader of the pack. And if the first one doesn't work, like for whatever reason, it doesn't sit well, or it's just, I always say it feels uncomfortable, I say, nope, he doesn't want to be there. I say to the guys, usually who I work with, usually in Spanish, and they kind of roll their eyes, but they go along with me. And then you find the one that works and is happy and looks comfortable. And if that guy's comfortable, then the rest of them will fall in place. And I truly believe that.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that so reminds me about my conversation with Pete Nelson, who's known as the Treehouse Master. He had a television show for I think 10 years on Animal Planet. And
Wow.
when he goes out into the forest, he looks for the tree that's kind of going to be like the one that will be just like you're saying, you know, when you get that one perfect tree, it all falls into place.
That's interesting. I never thought about it with trees, but certainly with the rocks. And the other thing with the rocks is that say you're saying, okay, what's the next rock or what's the next rock? And I just literally scan the pile of rocks, and wherever my eye alights upon, that's the one. And when I was younger and was just starting out, I would just, you know, is this the one? Is that the one? It would take so long for me to make a decision. Now I just kind of, just pop up and say me. Because I'll say silently, who's next?
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, it reminds me of when I take a walk on the beach and I'm looking at the rocks as I walk and I'm like, all right, who wants to come home with me? I'm just that type of energy.
Yes,
And it's like, you'll just
exactly.
see it.
Yes.
And here's one such rock. Oh my gosh, look at it.
Now, do you collect white rocks on the
I
beach?
do.
See, I collect white rocks on the beach. See?
Oh, I've
See?
got
White rocks.
and oval and round. There's something about that.
Interesting. It started with me when I would go to the beach. My father would stay home. I'd say, Dad, what do you want me to bring back for you? And he would say, white rock. I said, oh, okay. Oh, and so I would start to look for white rocks to bring home to my father when I was younger. And it's just stuck with me. But I do know that there's something about white rocks in the Scandinavian culture because he was Norwegian. But I don't know what it is. I'd like to find out.
Ooh.
Maybe one of your viewers knows about the
Oh,
white
well, I'm
rocks
going
or
to do
something.
research on it. You know that Mercury and Virgo is going to research it.
But isn't that interesting? You got white rocks and I have white rocks.
Well, when you
Interesting.
say Norwegian, although I'm not really Norwegian, I am Scottish. And the name
Next door.
Matheson, it is from a Norwegian
Matheson.
root.
Oh, that's so interesting. We both collect the white rocks. So there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Wow.
And we both have that connection to the earth, which I believe in Scandinavian culture is very strong.
Yes.
Very strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So I love that little story about gathering rocks when you were really little. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, that is kind of like, prescient of what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's when I studied a landscape architecture way back, and I studied. By the way, I grew up in New York City in apartments. I mean, there was hardly any nature around. But I studied landscape architecture at the University of Hawaii. This is before Hawaii was this big giant tourist place. It was much more Hawaiian. I lived on an organic farm in a town called Waimanalo. And that's when I really tuned into nature and I studied about these little people that they talk about in Hawaii called the Menahunis. And I studied about the culture in the island of Mu, that's Lemuria, which came about during the same age as Atlantis, but they called it Mu over there in Hawaii. And that's when I kind of got open to all this kind of otherworldliness. I mean, I was studying landscape architecture, I was studying horticulture. It was all very scientific and practical. But then there was this other side that, for being on the island of Oahu, seemed to foster it. There was definitely an energy there that opened up my mind, much more so than, say, being in the States. I don't know if you've ever been there, but
Yeah. Yes.
so
I have a very strong connection with Hawaii. In fact, in my book, creating luminous spaces. I open it with a scene on Maui.
Wow. See this? You and I definitely are tuned in, huh?
Yes, yes,
Aligned.
absolutely. And when I went to the Big Island and experienced the volcano was actually erupting, Mauna Kea was erupting while we were there, and I got to see that red hot orange lava flow at night into the ocean, and it was just spectacular, an amazing experience.
Amazing. I also did go there. Now, again, I was there many decades ago, but I was walking with my friend around I don't know if you can do this anymore, on the lava fields where literally the earth was cracking open with the red fiery lava coming out. The sulfur smell was really intense. But you felt like, or I felt like I was at the creation of the earth. I said, it was just that powerful.
Yes.
Nothing like this beautiful area where I live with the trees and the grass. No, this was raw, vital, just creation.
Yes, we had that same experience, Jan, and I feel so grateful to be able to have done that. I mean, literally seeing, like you said, the cracks between the lava and it flowing right beneath the feet was just
Yeah,
incredible.
that is something people should experience once in their life, right? Definitely. But and so when I went to University of Hawaii, one of the classes I took was geology. So I learned all about the different varieties of lava, which I think like Hawaii, which is so funny, right? But but that too was a form of studying about rocks and just that whole rock consciousness and seeing how it's formed and all. And when I talk about rocks when I give my classes, and I explain that how the Native Americans would view large boulders as memory keepers, and they would address them as grandfather because it was an awareness that these rocks, these magnificent beings, and Lauren Isley has a wonderful quote about their giant beings. I love Lauren Isley, by the way. That's no strip. That they were memory keepers because the giant boulders are here before we show up and they persist after we leave. And they do indeed keep the memories of a place. And you could say geomagnetic forces or whatever, but you can feel it. They are like they're the guardians of the space.
Yes, and up where you live in Westchester, and of course across New England, there's just these amazing guardians of rock from the glaciers.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely here. The glaciers, which were 10-story high ice formations. And as they melted and wherever they stopped and melted, that's where a lot of the glacial erratics or these giant rocks, they would just drop them. So that's what we have around here. We have these amazing giant rocks. And yeah, it's
We
remarkable.
have a little bit on the North Shore of Long Island where I live, but unfortunately, we don't have one on our land. But I do admire them so much when I come across them during hikes.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, so that's the one aspect talking about rocks. But then my book that you very graciously showed, Heaven is a Garden. That's the one where I met you.
Yes.
That book was actually, I don't often tell people this, but it was somewhat channeled. And what I mean by that is I would wake up very early in the morning. I'd be at my computer at 5 in the morning, and I would say, "What are we writing about today?" And whatever I got, that's what I wrote about. So, whereas, other books, you write your outlines and first I'll do this. Now, I didn't do that with Heaven's a Garden. I literally said, what chapter is this about? And I would hear water. I said, oh, okay, let's talk about water. And so it just kind of flowed right out of me,
Wow.
which so that I always call Heaven is a Garden is like my passion project. And I did write about things that were definitely on the more mystical side I would talk about messages of the trees, and I talked about the different energies of various different trees, which, people are understanding now. 10 years ago, they didn't, but people are definitely understanding more about the different fingerprints, or so to speak, or energetic fingerprints of the different trees. Don't you think,
Oh,
Maureen?
absolutely. I mean, I really have seen just an expansion of consciousness among people. They're really becoming more
Yes,
aware. Absolutely.
much more
Much
aware.
more aware of that unseen realm, or tapping into it in
Yes.
some way. Maybe not having the language around it so much, but I could definitely see that people are feeling it more.
They're more open to it for sure, right? I think we are going through a big consciousness expansion right now. It may start slowly, which I think it's starting slowly, but I think at some point it's just going to, that's my hope anyway, just with a little understanding. Like people talk about the breath, for example, and people are understanding how breathing affects us, our well-being, our health, and our awareness. If you say, well, it affects your pineal gland, and now they don't understand that perhaps, but they know it makes it feel better. Various breathing
Oh,
techniques.
yeah, definitely. And just talking about water for a second, you mentioned, that flowing water in your book. There's there's some real very interesting people talking about the consciousness of water, and that water itself is divine consciousness.
Absolutely, and that I mean, Dr. Emoto, who wrote the
Messages of water.
messages of. I went to see him speak years and years ago too, but his English was not very good. but yeah, that was groundbreaking. And if you think about it, our bodies are all made up of water, and the plants are all made up of water. And so, if water holds, you know, consciousness, can you imagine if you wake up in the morning and say to the tree outside your door, "I love you"? You know, at least the water in the tree cells picks that up, and then the tree grows faster, which is one of the reasons certain people have green thumbs, right?
Yes.
They literally put out the vibes to their plants, and their plants respond. And it's not some crazy magical thinking. It's real. It's real.
Yes, it's just expressing or acknowledging presence of the trees and the flowers and the rocks and all of nature, right? The soil.
Exactly. It's exactly. And when they talk to you about how one of the biggest effects on your health is just the practice of gratitude, I think that's how it expands into our natural environment. You say thank you. You say thank you to the trees. Thank you for, I mean, it's all part of it. Everything starts to sing. Everything around you starts to sing. I have a practice of every year I plant a gardenia in a pot outside my door when the weather is warm enough, and I sniff it every morning before I get in the car, come home, because they say that the scent of gardenias is an antidepressant, and so I sniff the gardenia flowers, and of course I can't do it all year because it's a warm weather plant, but and I thank it. And it makes me feel better. And I'm sure it makes the plant feel better too. But there is some chemical thing in this fragrance of gardenia, and it's also in jasmine, that same chemical that actually helps us. It's a gift of nature, right? I mean, fragrance. It's either cedar scented, from a tree or a flower or a fruit. And I don't think we give enough credence to the fact that all these things come from nature. And I think too, and I hope so, that more and more people are understanding how, along with good organic food and everything, that they have to have more nature in their lives. They're saying, well, kids who grow up with trees are happier than kids who don't grow. I can attest to that, having grown up in concrete jungle of New York City. I lived in Queens and then Brooklyn and Manhattan. Not so many plants, and I missed it. And when I came out and visit upstate New York, Westchester County to me was upstate. I said, "Look at this! Look, these are these trees, and there's giant rocks, and there's little streams." It was amazing. And I still work with inner city kids at camps too, because I know how they're responding,
Oh, wow.
and I like doing.
That is
Yeah,
wonderful. And where do you do that?
there's a camp that Westchester Parks Foundation runs, and I volunteer.
That is fabulous.
It's great.
Yeah. It's kind of like forest bathing.
Mars bathing, right? That's exact. Yeah. I mean, they liken it to this fragrance emitted by trees, but you and I both know it's the whole energetic imprint of the trees that we're responding to, right? It's just being in their presence.
There's a quote. There's a
Yeah.
quote by architect Christopher Day that we don't merely see our environments, we breathe them in.
Oh, lovely. That's exactly right. You know, I have also, because I just came back from camping, I camp every year for 1 week in the same place up in Cape Cod, which is a pine forest, but the soil is sandy. So let's say if it rains, the rain just goes right into the soil. But it's pine tree forest, sandy soil, and I sit there, and that's my one time of the year where I just literally commune, talk to the trees, and it's all about breathing it in, and it's the one opportunity I get to walk barefoot because it's sandy soil, so I walk barefoot in the woods. And that whole understanding of grounding. I always think about practice of grounding and walking barefoot on the earth, especially when I go to this wonderful campground. It's the Audubon Wildlife Refuge. And I thought a lot about it this week, Maureen, because along with the breathing in, it's also the our feet touching the earth and absorbing those ions from the earth, geomagnetic frequencies of the earth, and they literally go into our bodies because, as you probably know, our feet have more nerve endings than any other part of our body. We are made to be walking barefoot on the earth. It's kind of like batteries, positive and negative, when they connect. It's like our feet with all those nerve endings, literally, it's connecting into the battery of the earth. I truly believe this. And we can feel it, right?
Yeah.
Grounding.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very physical experience being in our bodies. And I always thought it was interesting when people said you have to be present, you have to be in your body. And I would think, well, of course I am in my body. Like I didn't really get it until I realized that no, we're not in our body. We're usually here. We're actually
That's
here.
right.
It's all the thoughts and the mental chaos around us. But when we really get grounded, and that's when we can live in the present moment. Only
Yeah.
when we're in our bodies.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. So being in nature, and if we can't be in nature, if we don't have access to Audubon Wildlife Refuge, right? My feeling is at least if we could make little gardens or little beautiful outdoor settings that celebrate the earth and the natural elements, the trees, that's as good as anything. Which is one of the reasons why I became a landscape designer, was to enhance our well-being through connection to the natural world.
It's about helping other people connect to nature. And that's what we have in common.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And you and with your feng shui and energy awareness. Yeah.
So, do you have a story you'd like to share about something very moving to you in nature? Very moving experience?
Well, I have several. They're not big wowie powy stories, right? But one is a very small story, but it kind of was. I've always remembered it. I got married in a little chapel in the edge of some woods, and this was in the Hudson Valley. And so I was alone, just checking everything out, and I decided to walk behind the chapel and walk into the woods. Not very far. I just was kind of checking out the neighborhood, so to speak. And so I walked in for maybe a quarter of a mile or something. Just there was no specific trail. I just kind of made my way, maybe a deer trail. But then I came upon a glade, and it was a glade. It's like an opening in the woods where all of a sudden it was a tree. The trees didn't grow there. And it's definitely circular, and there was ferns. And I remember how it was magic. I could feel it. And I thought, and again, back I was younger, and I thought, if there were ever fairies, this is where they live. I just caught that feeling. And all of a sudden I understood all those stories that I grew up with about the nymphs and the fairies and the beings that inhabited the woods. And I felt it. And I said, now I understand. Now I understand their existence. Did I see any? No, I didn't see any, but I could feel them. And I never forgot that. I never forgot that. And that's kind of when my mind opened up to other worlds, the possibility of energetic beings that we may not see, but I knew they were there.
I love that you share that because I think a lot of people also have experienced that, but because perhaps they didn't see them or hear them, they discount it, they dismiss it, and they're just like, oh, but it's the feeling that matters.
It was like, you have entered a different realm. You have entered our realm, and just please, protect it, right? And I don't think many people have the opportunity to even come upon these places, right? They just, and people say, oh, I'm going to go for a hike. Well, a hike, we're just going to hike and we're going to go 3 miles. No, that's not the way to approach it. The way to approach it is with a sense of wonder and respect.
Yes. I love that word, wonder. Respect.
If you think about, we've lost a sense of wonder in this culture, and I'm hoping that we can get it back. I mean, we almost beat it out of the children, at a very young age, when in fact we should be enhancing it. And I believe, like you and I believe we are the way showers. And probably a lot of your audience are the way showers, where our job is to keep talking about that, keep the wonder alive. Don't be afraid. And I'm guilty of this, where I was afraid for many, many years of talking about that other side of me. And at this late stage, I'm like, okay, now's the time.
Yes.
Right? Now's the time to shout it to the rooftops. The world is a magical place.
Yeah, it's like not just acknowledging, yes, but to really be out there with it, because that is what the world needs now, because that is what brings that joy and lightness and just, I mean, this is what life is about. It's not the heaviness, it's not the darkness. We have to rise out of that. And there was another quote that was something to the effect of curiosity will be able to conquer fear more than bravery ever will.
Oh, that's fascinating. Curiosity will conquer fear. Well, that's another thing that's common to a lot of people that are of our ilk, where we want to know. We are seekers. We want to know, and it's that curiosity. Where I just keep reading books about sacred spaces or talking with nature or um, you know trying to understand what how it all works. And I talk about things like in my books, I talk about north, south, east, and west. Why is east the beneficial direction? All these things that we should know, that we probably did in some other generations, but that we have to teach ourselves, because otherwise we won't learn it otherwise.
Right. And of course not everything is from a book, right? And I know we
Right.
we
Oh,
we
right.
we can get caught
Oh,
up with that
right.
with Mercury and Virgo. It's got to
What
be somewhere, right?
what is that wonderful Shakespeare quote about the sermons in stones? How there's sermons in stones, and the brooks are talking, and you know it's how we really learn, right? We really learn.
It's
We're rediscovering what has already been known. Frankly, I think that what you're doing and what I'm doing, this is really what we have to do. Just kind of keep talking about the magic of rocks and the energy, the messages of the trees, and how you kind of get reborn when you're out there in nature. Seriously, I think right now that's our job. Oh, it's a wonderful feeling to be able to talk about all this stuff. And I had one kind of epiphany when I was in camping this week. I was thinking about walking barefoot and about being grounded and how we get our energy through the soles of our feet that just go up into our bodies, right? Which makes total sense. And then I looked at the trees as I was walking, and they're grounded into the earth, and they absorb this wonderful, beautiful energy, because the earth is a geomagnetic. It's a battery, right? It's a spinning, rotating battery. And the tree roots absorb this wonderful energy that we thrive on. And then they bring it up, and then they emit it from their leaves. And I just thought, we're all in this whole little energy dynamic here. And if we only understood that it's more than giving us shade or giving us fruit, that it literally permeates it. Well, these are nature's cell towers.
Oh, well, this has been just awesome and amazing. And every time we talk, just want to hug you. It's been a while since we've seen each other in person, but
Yeah, we're definitely sympathetic souls.
yes. Are there any last words you would like to share?
I didn't really think about it, but I get this wonderful opportunity. I guess I would like for people not to do what I have done for most of my life. I hid my more mystical aspects, and I would like people to just let their Greek flag fly. And be open. When I would never forget the first time somebody accused me of magical thinking, it kind of shut me right down. And I would just say, okay, fine. And I don't care anymore. I'm like, now it's now or never almost. And so I guess what I'd love to share with others is that please just be more open about it. And it probably will, like you do for me, you allow me to talk about these things without any fear of repercussions or and I guess if your audience does the same thing that you do, that it would encourage others to open up as well, like you do for me.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. That is so important. And I feel that is one of the missions of this podcast and my book that will be coming out in December. Sharing our stories in nature so that others can perhaps see themselves in your story and say, okay, that happened to me too, or something like that happened. That was real. That was
Yes,
an
exactly.
important thing to remember. Wow.
That's great, Maureen. That's wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Well, yes, and I'd love to come back any other time, anytime you want.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yes, 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 please. I would love that. There's so much more to explore. I know.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all of you listening. And I would love for you to comment and share and subscribe to this YouTube channel if you feel called to. And please look up Jan and her wonderful books and amazing speaking engagements that she does. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth podcast. Comment below, share, and most of all, please hit the subscribe button so that you'll hear when we publish another inspiring episode. You can visit us at luminous-spaces.com for more information on our online courses, retreats, and offerings. Thank you and have a magical day.